Did you say Alvaran? Yes. You're welcome. Oh yeah, I thought that. So yeah. Yes, I was there. Of course. Yes.
Yeah, it does. It briefly. But at any rate, you can hear him, you can see him. If you can hear somebody if they're at a computer. So it's recording, it's going to Zoom to you, or I can check that Zoom. So the link is there. Everyone should hear, they should see it there. So I need to run away because I was supposed to be at the theater an hour ago. They knew I was going to be late. Alright, and that's got a battery.
This mic works, right? This is my work.
That's got battery.
And you can hear us on the line.
Yeah, I'll go through the computer. So, yep, both ears work. And that is on. These are both on. Yep. So both handhelds and electron mic are all on. Ready to go.
We're going to get started in just a moment. Everything's, and can you hear us on that? Can you hear us out there in California? Can you hear us? I think you can.
Can you email or text me? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it is.
Izzy, can you hear us? Maybe he's muted. I'm not sure if Izzy can hear us. Oh, Carolyn's going to be over here and talking to our speaker, introduce him, and then we'll turn it over to our speaker then, okay? Yeah, sit right there and I'll do it simultaneously. Now, see if you
Hello, everybody. We're waiting for a few more people to join us, but people are a little bit slower this morning to get in here.
Can you hear us there, Izzy?
Yes,
Okay,
I
beautiful,
can.
beautiful.
You guys can all hear. Okay, so we'll have a bunch more people trickling in. So, as you may know, in July, the FUMC hosted a large conference for the Reconciling Ministries Network, and hundreds of people from all over the Methodist Church all over the country came. But I would say that probably most people in our church didn't really know what the conference was all about because we were busy being hosts and we were doing things like vacuuming the rugs and taking people to where they needed to be and so on. So I thought it'd be really important for us to learn what happened at the conference. Well, what was the conference all about? What happened and what kind of decisions were made? So Ron asked Dr. Izzy Alvarin to come to us virtually and give a presentation about what the conference was about. And he gracefully accepted our invitation. And so he is, Dr. Izzy Alvarin serves as the director of United Methodist Connections for Reconciling Ministries Network, which is an organization committed to LGBTQ plus and justice affirmation in the UMC and beyond. He's from the Philippines and a member of the California Pacific Conference. And he's coming to us today from Berkeley, California. So he's going to share what happened at the conference, its highlights, and the significance of the reconciling movement during the historic moment of changes in our UMC stance on LGBTQ plus inclusion. So if this conference isn't ringing a bell to you, you may remember one of the most important or most inspiring services we had in our church ever was on July 27th when our congregation joined with the conference attendees joined with our parishioners, and we had this really incredible service, Sunday service, where they had brought their own piano player and singers, and we had this incredible moment at the end of the service where we made a big giant circle around the sanctuary and we sang "Draw the Circle Wide," and many of us were brought to tears during that. So I would like to welcome Dr. Izzy Alvarin to sharing our journeys. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very glad to speak with you today. Could you hear me? Okay, perfect. RMN's convocation happens every 2 years, okay? Every 2 years. And the most recent convocation was held in your church. And so also on behalf, before I go on behalf of RMN, thank you for hosting us. And you were very gracious. You provided us excellent hospitality. I worked with your pastors and also with some of your volunteers that provided hospitality to participants coming from the Philippines and some parts of Africa. And that was really great. You know, I'll explain later what impact that had on some of our participants from outside the United States. MN hosts this convocation, this gathering, every 2 years. And one of those two happens a year before a general conference. And if you're not familiar with United Methodist Church structure, the general conference happens every 4 years in different places. It's an international gathering of about 800 to 1,000 official delegates coming from all over the world. And that's where they craft policies for the whole denomination. So it's a legislative body. So consider it sort of our Congress, right? They craft all the policies. And so whenever we have convocation, a year before General Conference, that's when we do a lot of strategizing, planning, and also bonding together so that everybody's encouraged as we head into General Conference. And usually we hold that convocation in the same city where we would have General Conference. So the last convocation prior to this one we had at your church was held in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we had General Conference last year. And my first convocation for me personally, so a lot of these are my own personal stories, and then of course we'll have time for you to ask questions, was in 2013. I was newly hired as an organizer for Reconciling Ministries Network, so I've been with RMN for over 10 years now. It was at Chevy Chase in Maryland in 2013, and the theme was churchquake, okay? That we need to like shake up the churchquake. And the reason why it's very memorable to me is because that's the first time that I came out publicly as a gay United Methodist pastor, clergy person. I've never done it before, and maybe some of my friends knew, but at that event, in one of the events, I actually was, up there. You could even see that YouTube video, still there. I came out, and I even said, if my bishop is hearing this, and at that point I was still a member of the Philippines Annual Conference, I said, if my bishop is hearing this, I want to tell, my bishop that I am, an out gay clergy person. So it was very meaningful to me. So convocation is a time for many LGBTQ siblings to come together who are United Methodists and be strengthened and be encouraged. And some of us are not fully out, but we're participating because this is a safe space for many of us. But we also have a lot of our allies, a lot of our supporters that come to this event. But I remember, back in the day when we have convocations, we would have secret gatherings of LGBTQ clergy. It would not be inside the hotel where we're having it or the church where we're having it. It would be somewhere else far away because we didn't want to know anybody, right? We didn't want anybody else to see us or know who we are because not all of us are publicly out, And it's a reunion for many of us. And back then we would just be like one long, dining table, like maybe 20 of us, right? So some people are not even ready to come out. But it was a time to, refresh ourselves about the cause, about changing the policies of the church. Because if you're not aware, I could share with you the history here. In 1972, at the 1972 General Conference, that's when the language of incompatibility was added to the social principles. Back then we said that that grace is for all people, but we added this phrase, but the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching, without even studying what Scripture actually says. And from there, when people said, oh, it's incompatible with Christian teaching, that means, okay, so who you are, your loved ones, your family, that's everything about that, everything about you is not aligned with Scripture and with the church. And so from there, at every succeeding General Conference, we kept adding language saying, because the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching, we cannot ordain LGBTQ or homosexual clergy. And then later on we said, our pastors cannot officiate same-sex weddings, and that same-sex weddings cannot be held in our churches, and that no official church funds will be used for the promotion of homosexuality, whatever that means, right? And I always tell people, like, I don't know. Because people say, what do you mean by practicing? I always say, I joke about it. What do you mean by practicing homosexual? And I always tell my bishops, like, I'm not a practicing homosexual because I'm a professional homosexual, okay? I'm an expert. I'm good at what I do. This is my job to represent. I said I'm not a practicing homosexual. But basically what they're saying is, if you're married and they assume that you are having sexual relations with somebody of the same gender, that is already practicing homosexual. In fact, there are trials of gay clergy where they are asked, about their sexual practice. Like, nobody does that. Imagine the harm. Like, why would you? I mean, if I do weddings, I don't ask the people that I marry, like, well, how do you have sex? You don't even talk about that. I mean, there's a lot of ludicrous, funny things that the church has done over the years since 1972. But all that has changed last year, because we gather every 2 years, and in between we organize, the reconciling movement together with everybody else who are supporters. We were able to change that. It didn't happen overnight, okay? A lot of organizing, years of organizing went into that. And some of the people who have led this movement are either they've gone before us to glory. Some of them got tired and left the United Methodist Church. We have so many people who have left the church because of that. Of course, we do have more traditional siblings who've left the church because they didn't want the change, right? But this matter of how we do ministry with all of God's children has always been the main issue. They would say this is probably the main civil rights issue in the United Methodist Church in our time, but that changed. But remember, we only managed to remove harmful language, okay? We don't have any affirming language in the Book of Discipline, except that we respect the civil rights, the human rights of all people. But there's no affirming language. So what are the highlights for me of this convocation? I would want to make sure that we have enough time for you to actually share your questions. I said earlier, I loved convocation because of the reunions. You see old friends, right? So for me personally, that was a highlight. I didn't just get to see new people like you being our hosts. You had those really nice rainbow sash. It's a sign of welcome. But I got to see other LGBTQ clergy. But now we were not hiding. We had a reception, a public reception at the hotel right across from your church. And we were all there. And we were not just 10, 20 people. I think there were like 40, 50 people in the room. And there were new faces. There were people who I've never met before, who are just starting their ministry and who are coming out and saying, I'm about to go to seminary, or I'm currently in seminary. And it encourages many of us who've been in this movement for a long time to see that there are new people coming up. And with the changes done at General Conference last year that removed all of the harmful and discriminatory language, there's a lot more LGBTQ potential clergy that are coming out. And maybe some are even also joining our church because we have made those changes. And there are people who are probably coming back because we made those changes. Another thing that was new for me, of course, we had bishops. We have bishops who are supporters who come to this event. But it was always good to see the host bishop, Bishop Dan Schwerin, originally from Wisconsin Conference, participate and welcome us there. We had two of our LGBTQ clergy, openly LGBTQ bishops, Bishop Cedric Bridgefort from the Greater Northwest Episcopal area, and Bishop Kristen Stone King from the Mountain Sky Episcopal area, the Denver area, and she preached that Sunday, the last Sunday, and I'll get to that later. But what was striking, and a first, was we had a video greeting from the president of the Council of Bishops. That That never happened before. For the first time at an RMN convocation, the president of the Council of Bishops shared a video, a greeting from the Council of Bishops. I always say, you know, for the longest time we were in the doghouse of the church. We were just like, we were out there, and suddenly we were being ushered from the periphery into the center of the church. And we had United Methodist News Service cover our work. It's almost like we're being mainstreamed. I mean, I don't want to say that as an LGBTQ person. You kind of want to stay different, right? But it's always good to engage the church and be involved and be recognized. So Bishop Malone's, Bishop Tracy Smith Malone's greeting was a first. That was historic. Another first thing that happened at your church was the presence of general agencies and their sponsorship. You probably saw all those tables, right? We had a lot of tables. We had over 20 display tables. You know, in previous convocations, like the one we had in Charlotte, we had a table in the fellowship hall of the church in Charlotte, but we didn't have general agencies there. No general agency would spend money because they're not allowed to. Because at that time there was a funding ban. There was a funding ban. But immediately after the funding ban was lifted, the General Commission on Archives and History in Charlotte, while we were still having General Conference, announced the organizing of an LGBTQ Heritage Center that they were funding. And this year, when we reached out to general agencies to sponsor convocation and also have tables, they showed up. You probably saw, for you who were there, who volunteered, there was this table from Westpath, who is the agency in charge of church workers' pensions. They really had all of, you know, if you've been to other conferences and you see Westpath's table, it's always like really boring. You know, because they're talking about pension funds, right? Oh no, this time they went all out. They were in rainbow colors. I actually even thought that it was an RMN table snuck in one corner. I said, oh, when I came out, I said, oh no, you're Westpath. They were all in rainbow colors. They all went out for that. But it was the sponsorships. For the first time, I mean, we've had people from outside the US participate. But, you know, usually it's one person. But also because they're usually already in the United States or they're on the RMN board. But for the first time, we had a general agency say that, well, of course, they're still probably shy or challenged, and said, we really can't give you money directly. And they said, we don't want it announced, but we can sponsor 6 people from Africa in the Philippines. And they paid for their airfare for the first time. They said, look for the people, but they notified us like a month before convocation. So I had to look for people who already had visas. I mean, I would have chosen other people, but people who came were great. But they were sponsored. They came, they were sponsored, and they participated, and they enjoyed it. And you know the impact that I could tell you? It's just one person changing hearts and minds, right? So we had a gay couple from your church who picked up one of the participants from Africa. And, you know, when I chose people to attend, I didn't choose them or recommended them because they're an ally. I chose people who would be open to have conversations. Because if we are to remain in this church, we have to also understand that there are different contexts where people come from. The Philippines is a very conservative church, okay? While we have bishops and we have people there who are supporters, all of our LGBTQ siblings who are deaconesses, church workers, and clergy are not out. I was the first one who was publicly out. Okay, and that was difficult, but I survived. I'm still here, right? But that person from Africa was hosted by one of our members, our gay couple folks there, picked her up from the airport, provided her food, dropped her off at the hotel, and then from the hotel later on, dropped her off at the airport. And I asked the couple, I said, well, how was the conversation in the car? When you said that you're a gay couple, and they said it actually really went well, but and they witnessed and said, it's really very hard because in some places that we go to, we can't be publicly out, we can't even hold hands, but we are a gay couple, we've been together this much, and we go to this church, and this participant, who was a district superintendent from Angola, I think that really touched her, because I know she's conservative. I know, she said later on to another African participant, I have never seen gay people worship in worship. I have never seen LGBTQ people sing in church. Basically, it's not, you're not out. I wouldn't be surprised if she's met a gay person in her country, especially if it's illegal. But her being there and being hosted by your church, by United Methodist Church, and mind you, our United Methodists from Africa and the Philippines are very loyal to the United Methodist Church. So that's when even there was this global Methodist church that started. Even if they shared the same views with them on homosexuality, they said, we're not leaving the United Methodist Church. And for them to see the witness of LGBTQ persons and allies and supporters, that is changing hearts and minds. And she said she was having goosebumps during worship services, because that's the Holy Spirit talking to you and messing with your head and your heart, right? And that was a big deal to have international participants at this convocation, because they're going to go back. I'm going to keep on reaching out to them. They're going to go back, right? And that is very, very important. We had a panel discussion. Another highlight for me was a panel discussion that talked about how are we going to reach out to regions outside the United States. Okay? Well, of course, we wanted to make sure that our outreach is not using a colonial model. We're not telling them what to do, but we're building relationships. We're continuing the conversation. We're building mission partnerships. Imagine in the future, your church having a partnership with a church or a district or an annual conference, let's say in Africa or the Philippines. And you have your gay couple or a LGBTQ pastor go on a volunteers in mission to dig a well in somebody's backyard for clean water. And then you go there and show them and tell them, and you're hosted by a very conservative family, and say, and they would probably be thinking like, I'm hosting dinner for a gay couple. Oh my God. And they probably never met a gay couple. And then you would have the wonderful conversations that allow the Holy Spirit to speak to their hearts and minds. And the relationships that you would build after that, you would email each other, you would, text each other, and know that, oh, we also have kids, we also have children, or this is what's happening in our church. Changing hearts and minds is not really based on our time. It's based on God's timing, perfect timeline. And what we started at your church was great. That was where, imagine that person would years from now witness and say, I was in Madison, Wisconsin at that United Methodist Church, and that was where I encountered the Spirit talking to me through people I've always thought to be different, other, and not accepted. So that was to me a highlight. Coming from the Philippines, coming from a place where people are conservative, and up to now I'm being vilified, right? But I keep going, I keep attending, I keep showing up. And my former bishop would always say, why are you always attending conferences in the Philippines sitting in the front pew with a big rainbow fan? I said, I want you to see me. I want people to see me because there are LGBTQ siblings there who need to know that it can change and things will change. And then there's that message by Bishop Stone King that Sunday. And what struck me there, because the theme is uncharted, right? The theme for this convocation was uncharted, because after the changes was made by General Conference, we had people ask questions about, so are we still relevant? Do we still need to continue this work? And I tell people, well, we need to make sure that every church, and that is what we've been saying as RMN, right? That's sort of our mantra now, until every church is the church for every child of God. General Conference can only do so much as to change policy. In fact, we only took out harmful language. But what we've heard from other bishops and other church leaders is that, nothing has really changed except we took out this language, and you can still keep on doing what you're doing as a local church. That to me is code for churches that are not open to actually say, oh, we can continue not accepting people here who are different. Even if the General Conference has made changes to the policies, just taking out harmful language, I cannot tell another person looking for a church to just go to any Methodist church that has a cross and flame and feel safe. No, I would always recommend them to go and find a reconciling church, because I know that's safe space for them. And unfortunately, I have to tell you this, there are even reconciling churches who we've heard are not even ready to accept an LGBTQ pastor. Not surprising. You know why? Because there are churches who would tell their bishops and district superintendents, we don't want a woman pastor, we don't want a black pastor or a person of color for our pastor. I mean, if that's the case, and supposedly we're post-racial, right? Supposedly we're over gender and issues of racism, what more about LGBTQ persons? That's a totally different thing. Imagine if you're a lesbian and you're Latina, oh my God, where would you be placed? Where would you be appointed? Right? We're not done, church. We're just starting the work right now. We've been given a gift of an open door. It was like a blank slate. We're going pre-1972. That's what we did. But what we need to work for now is affirmation. And that is what Bishop Stone King said that day. God is still leading. God is still leading. We're not done with this work until every church is a church for every child of God. And so right now, we have 19, after this General Conference, we have 19 annual conferences in the United States. And these are regional bodies of the church where we also make policies for a certain geographical region. And clergy are members of an annual conference, right? If for you, it's the Wisconsin Annual Conference that meets every year, hence it's annual, and special meetings led by a bishop. We have 54 conferences or regional bodies in the United States, but 19 of those 54 now have official conference standing committees on LGBTQ ministry, because they're allowed to do that. And that comes with funding to institute ministries, because now the funding ban is gone. And now they can be official committees of the conference. It used to be that we had RMN committees or RMN teams, but not official. We were working on the sidelines. Now we're not stopping that. We need to have a robust grassroots group, but to be at the table of annual conference means a lot. My work is to create more of these committees as a director for United Methodist Connections. My work is to work with bishops, with general agencies, to usher the movement into that conversation now that the church is more open. We want to test that openness. And I'm hoping that in 2028, when we have our own U.S. regional conference, because we don't, I'm not going to go into church polity right now, but we're hoping that the restructure that was passed at General Conference would be ratified by our conferences, and we would know in November, early November, if we have a new structure. The U.S. will have its own regional conference with its own book of discipline, meaning in the U.S. we can have affirming language. We can have our own hymnal that has a liturgy for same-sex marriage, a naming ceremony for our transgender siblings. We can have songs that actually honor the lives of all people. That's what regionalization does. But it's a compromise. It allows regions outside the U.S. to maintain harmful language. In fact, that's what happened. After General Conference last year, all the regional conferences that met outside the U.S. reinstated and actually doubled down and said, in this conference, we're maintaining this. We can't receive LGBTQ clergy. We can't do same-sex weddings. And I understand that because it's not legal. There's no same-sex marriage in the Philippines. There's no same-sex marriage Africa, the African continent, except South Africa. There are countries in South Africa, in Africa like Uganda, in Congo, in Nigeria, in Liberia, where it is illegal to be LGBTQ. Okay? So I understand their mission context, but that should not stop us from supporting organizing work that's happening locally. And I will share with you my own work. I've been traveling to the Philippines since 2022. I've been going home to start work with LGBTQ siblings and allies there. Many of them are closeted. We have pastors, seminarians in the closet, church workers, but we also have allies. And twice a year, we've been meeting during Pride Month and during Christmas. We gather anywhere from 30 to 40 people. I wish I could show you the pictures, but many of them are not out openly. But we've been gathering, and we're trying to strengthen each other. And I think we are ready, maybe in 2027, we're ready to become some kind of unique faith expression. It could be a local church. So I'm ready to actually move. I mean, I've been telling our director that maybe in 2027, I could work remotely in the Philippines to start organizing a new church that's United Methodist, but from the ground up, open and welcoming of all people. It has to happen. Because that's how it started in the United States. In 1984, that's when we started the Reconciling Church program, which eventually turned into Reconciling Ministries Network. We started with just 2 reconciling churches. One in California, of all places, Fresno, California, in the California Central Valley, okay, and one in New York City. We started with 2. And now we have a full-blown reconciling movement, still a drop in the bucket. Do you know when your church became a reconciling church? Does anybody here have history? Do you remember? Maybe you're one of the first ones because you're in this capital city of your state, right? And now you're part of that movement. Now that organizing needs to start from the grassroots in African countries and in the Philippines. We're not doing it for them. because that's a very colonial way of organizing. What we're trying to do is support the organizing that they're already doing. And I'm doing this in the Philippines because, well, that's my home conference. I have friends there. I'm fluent in the national language. And I'm the only one who's an out clergy person. And I would really hope that there would be more out clergy there once they realize that they could actually be out and organize. But that would take some time. Right now, I'm building relations with our bishops. And I even tell one of our bishops, well, you know your nephew's gay and out. What do you think? You're not just, you're not just his auntie, right? You're his bishop. And you tell me that you love him. And then there's another bishop who has a sister who's lesbian and partnered. I said, we are not just your members, we're your family. And I think when we start doing that and being out, it's a privilege to be out. Not everybody can do that in certain contexts. But we're trying to build this relation. So next month, I'm going to the Philippines to attend the Connectional Table meeting. I don't know if you know what the Connectional Table is. The Connectional Table is our denomination's church council. If you have a church council, the Connectional Table is our international church council. And I'm attending, well, not as RMN, but I'm the elected representative from the Western jurisdiction. We have 5 jurisdictions, so there's 5 representatives from the US. And it so happens that the first out-of-country meeting, this quadrennium, is going to be in the Philippines. So I will be there on the church's dime to organize, okay? And what I'm hoping, and this is, I think, an ask for you, since I was given an opportunity to talk to you before I leave next weekend, right? I'll be there for about 20 days, but I'll be working remotely in the Philippines. In fact, I'm staying there until the end of December. Since I'm already there, I'm going to spend all of my vacation days in December. Plus, good news, I'm also getting married there. I want to get married soon before the Supreme Court makes any changes to marriage equality. And thank God for the great state of Utah, of all places, that allows a Zoom wedding. So if you don't know that, Utah County is the only place in the United States that allows everything is virtual. Applying for a license is virtual. Getting married is virtual. And it's legal because it's a United States wedding. Anyway, as an aside, I'll be there and I will be gathering people. I will convene people. And I am hoping that that is something you could support. RMN has a lot of supporters, but I understand that. But usually, this kinds of travel outside the U.S., we don't have funds for that. And I'm very glad that the General Church, the Connectional Table, is paying for my airfare and hotel. But I need to gather people. I need to host them for events. I need to travel from island to island. I'm hoping you could support that. And I don't know who I could contact for you to do that, but you can go to the RMN website, rmnetwork.org. I wish I had a QR code. And there's a link there to make a donation. Just mark that donation for Central Conferences and note that it's for Philippines outreach. Okay? rmnetwork.org. And then if you go through the link there, maybe even if you make a one-time donation, if you make it monthly, that's great. But if you put something there that says you want to designate it, there's a choice there that you could say Central Conference. And then when it says you want to, in honor of, you can say, you can designate it to Philippines Outreach. And then once it's in, I can ask our executive director and say, looks like we have some funds for Central Conference Outreach in the Philippines. Would you send that check so that I could use it for my outreach there? Otherwise, she would tell me there's no budget for this, right? So I will stop talking, and I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you. And I would love to hear your comments and your questions.
Thank you, Reverend
Yes, I could hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you. Wow, that's fantastic. Great. Great, great.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Carolyn come over and set up the laptop, and then I'll have the microphone, and she'll relay the questions to you, okay?
Sure. Sure thing. And if you could tell people, if they want to get my email address, it's Izzy, I-Z-Z-Y, at rmnetwork.org. If you want to connect with me, especially if you are going to make a donation, so I could tell my boss, hey, so-and-so made a donation. Otherwise, it's going to go to our general fund. You know how executive directors want everything to go into operations? But I want this to go to actually direct mission work. It's IZZY at rmnetwork.org.
Anybody have a question?
Yes.
All right.
Any questions or comments?
All right, we'll relay a question over.
This is Emma. I'm on hormones. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, from New England originally, and this is my 5th year. And I'm proud to be an American citizen who had everything legalized in the system, but I'm still waiting for my surgeries.
Okay, I'm having trouble hearing that.
Okay,
it was like somebody who can say it directly into the computer.
Or you can go talk to me.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Hang on just a second. Okay, you can come here and speak into this one.
Hi, my name is Emma.
Okay.
I'm transitioning. I have not gotten my surgeries, but I have gotten everything else legalized, including my pronouns and everything. I go by she, her. And once I started on my hormones, I came out as a lesbian, and then I got all my knowledge to focus on that I know knowledge of female body parts and their time of month.
Well, thank you for having the courage to honor your identity as God created you. Thank you. And I'm hoping that you are grateful to have a church that would have you for who you are.
Yes, Pastor Ron, you from this church is a wonderful pastor. She's from South Korea.
Yes.
Well, anyways, I wanted to let you know that I'm the only one that's really signed up with the LGBTQIA plus community here. I was the first one back in 2021 to sign up with it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Your
Okay,
witness is very important.
We have another question. And if you can't hear him, then I'm going to tell you what the question is.
Okay.
All right, well, let's try this. You've described a
Can you hear him?
situation where it seems like we've got 3 factors at play. One is cultural acceptance and tolerance, the other is legal acceptance and tolerance, and the other is tolerance within the church. There seems to be some interplay over time between those 3. Is there one that drives the process of general acceptance?
Can you repeat that, Carolyn? He's talking about intolerance.
Okay, I think, can you hear me?
No, he's going to go to the laptop.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry if you had to walk to the
Can you hear me or no?
laptop. Maybe if you have a question, maybe you could start lining up at the laptop.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Weird
Yeah,
thing to
if you
say,
have a
but
question,
sure.
line up at the laptop.
Because there's that echo.
All right, let's try this again.
Yes.
All right, so there seem to be 3 different components to general acceptance. One is cultural, the other is legal, and then finally there's within the church.
Sure.
Is there one of those avenues that drives the general process? Or does it vary from place to place? How do you drive this process of acceptance over time? This is coming from the proud grandfather of two transgender grandchildren, so I have an interest in acceptance.
It is different in different places, okay? In the United States, I think when Harvey Milk came out, he said everybody should come out. And then there was this wave of everybody learning that their chiropractor or their kid's teacher or their physical therapist or their neighbor are LGBTQ. And usually it starts with knowing someone when it is no longer vague or an idea. When they see someone and they know someone personally, that's when it changes. In fact, when I came out to my parents only in 2016, the first thing my parents said, "You're our child, of course we love you." But there's always that but. They're not there yet, right? But it starts with knowing someone. And in different places, it depends on the culture. For example, in Congo, in most of Africa, one reason why it's hard to even acknowledge same-sex marriage is because before you even get into the legal or religious framework of same-sex marriage, there are cultural values of their tribes to begin with. In fact, even before you go into a church wedding, you're married within your tribe. So there's still going to be a lot of differences, a lot of a long-term process of changing hearts and minds that begins with the basic values of the culture. Now, for example, in the Philippines, the culture is pervaded by the Roman Catholic Church, because we are 90% Roman Catholic. Of the 100 million plus people, there's like 90% Roman Catholic. And the rest of the Christians are conservative. We only have one metropolitan community church or two. Then we have two other smaller churches that they're like house churches that are LGBTQ affirming. Imagine that, that's hard, but I can tell you the change. When I left the Philippines in 2003, okay, we didn't have pride parades. No pride parades, nothing like that. But now, last year, or this year, this past June, they had over 250,000 people in the streets in Manila alone at a pride parade. And now they're having it in different cities. And even the president had a pride reception in the president's palace. Over 20-something years of change. But that does not happen like that. It happened because there were LGBTQ allies and siblings who were organizing, who were being out there. So the stages of acceptance, and remember, acceptance does not equal affirmation. Tolerance is not affirmation. What the church has done recently is to take out the harmful language. In some places, it's basically just tolerating you. Affirmation, even inclusion, is no longer somewhat we're not going to sell for just inclusion, because inclusion is usually centered on who's inviting people to be included, right? What's centered there in inclusion is I'm including you, I have the privilege to invite you in. That's inclusion. But affirmation is basically centered on the person that's being affirmed. So we're still a ways off. And as a grandparent of a transgender sibling or person, you have a big role to play in being that cheerleader. Given the situation right now where the transgender community is being attacked, we need to speak up, because they're members of our family in our churches. Thank you for that question.
Any final questions? We probably need to wrap up. Carolyn, you want to thank our speaker, and we'll wrap. You have to use the laptop, though.
Does anybody else have a question, though? We still have about 7 minutes left.
No, I don't think so. I think we can go ahead and wrap. Well,
Oh, somebody in the back right there. I can see your hand. Just come to the thing if you could, please, if you're able.
So, pardon my ignorance, but in the United States, is same-sex marriage legal in every state? And do you think that could ever be overturned?
Right now, after the 2016, thank you so much for that question. In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court voted to declare that same-sex marriage is a constitutional right. Therefore, it is legal in every state of the Union. Right now, that's the law of the land. Only in 2016, so just like 10 years ago, right? Before that, we had a patchwork. There were states that legalized same-sex marriage, and there are states that did not. So that's why the Supreme Court had to make a ruling to say that this is now a federal right. And that could change, of course. That could change because the Supreme Court can vote now and say that we're rescinding that for whatever legal reasons they have. In fact, is it 2 months ago, Kim Davis, that county registrar, marriage registrar from Kansas, I think, or Kentucky, didn't want to give out marriage licenses to gay couples. She went to jail for that. And now she's appealing her case to the Supreme Court. And part of her appeal is to say, I'm asking you to also overturn your ruling of 2016, Obergefell. That's the ruling, right? Hey, we might have differences in views, but Roe v. Wade was a 50-year rule. It was supposed to be settled law, and that changed. Once the Supreme Court makes that change in the law on same-sex marriage, there are already states, maybe up to 30 states, that have trigger laws already approved, that once the Supreme Court changes that law, they will immediately revert back to we're not doing same-sex marriages in this state. But in 2022, the United States Congress passed the Respect for Marriage Act that will honor interracial marriages and same-sex marriages. So in 2022, that law passed, and it basically says that if anything changes, marriages done in states that allow same-sex marriages will be recognized in states that don't allow same-sex marriages. But if you're a couple in a state that does not allow same-sex marriage and you want to get married, you'd have to move to another state to do that. The only problem with that kind of patchwork is there might be some benefits of marriage that they would try to start watering down in the states that don't allow marriage. That's why LGBTQ lawyers are saying you might want, if you live in Texas, chances are they will not allow same-sex marriage. And you might need to recreate your wedding, meaning you're already married, but you're going to have extra papers on you, in your body, to say if something happens to my spouse, I want to have rights to go into the hospital, the emergency room, and be there for that person, which for a straight couple is already a given. You don't ask questions. I'm the spouse. You just go in there. No, but if you're a gay couple, they might just say, well, do you have the signed paperwork that's notarized? Do you have to? It's almost like everybody who's gay and married will always have to carry a bunch of papers on their body. Doesn't that sound Nazi? Like, I want to see the papers? That's what's going to happen. And that's why, friends, I freaked out. And so I told my partner, we're not ready for you to probably go to the US, but we need to get this done in the books. And I was like, should we go to Thailand? Should we go to other things? It's all expensive. But since I'm going to be there, we'll do this online. We just want to get it in the books. And I'm going to wait till there's a change in administration for a spouse petition. Imagine the hardship. Like, come on, we're second-class people here. We have to wait on other people to decide on how we're going to structure our marriage. That's the reality, folks. That's what I'm saying. Our job is not over. Our job is not over. Yes, thank you.
Dr. Izzy, we have to cut it off
Wrap
at
up.
this point. I'm really sorry that we don't have more time, but you have been very inspirational to us, and we wish you lots of good luck going forward, especially with your wedding.
Thank you.
Yeah. So everybody, would you like to give him a round of applause? And then we'll hear from Milton about next week.
Sure.
Thank you again.
God bless you.
You too.
Thank you. Can I tell the rest of you about next Sunday?
Yeah.
We hope.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you very much, Izzy. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. Next Sunday, we hope to be back in the chapel, which will feel more like home. And we have invited some of the newer, we've invited everybody, but they can't all come. The people who have joined the church in the last several months are going to be with us to tell us about themselves, and we'll have a chance to do some of the same for them. We have representing four different families. One is kind of an extended family, and then there's two couples, and then we have one that will be joining us from the Czech Republic, who is here in Madison a few months at a time, and then back with his family in Czech Republic, and he's arranging, hopefully, to get the right time zone and to be online with us. So it's always fun to hear from our new members, and we hope that you'll join with us and tell others. And I think being up in the chapel hopefully will help draw our crowd back because it's so much easier to have conversation up there. So any questions? It will be fun to have a chance to get some know some new people better, and for them to know us. So wear your good behavior. Okay.